So this would be a relatively short one. So we are on, this is House Republicans. It is March 25th, 2025 at 12:50 p.m. Long floor this morning. So looking at there are several bills that were postponed, H 342. We will probably we may have to caucus prior to floor or during floor to recess to caucus on that one. Because my understanding from Representative Harvey is that the committee worked over the weekend on that and really didn't do a whole heck of a lot with your amendment, so.
Yeah, can I just just take a second on it? So I know that in a very recent conversation that I had with all of you, I was very optimistic and encouraged by the conversations that I had had with the chair of House Commerce, and really where I felt the direction the committee was shifting. I thought that with the new Commerce Amendment, that the bill as it currently stands was going to be far more amenable to us as a collective caucus. I was alerted this morning that there was a lot of conversations that happened over the weekend that I was not privy to, and have obviously very grave concerns, and we'll be updating you all accordingly on whether my amendment as it currently stands, or if we're going to have to take a very different path and propose a new amendment to the amended Commerce Bill. And I'll keep everyone posted on the conversations that are going to be happening. But as it currently stands, they've done nothing to ameliorate any of the concerns that I had originally.
Okay. The other one that H 483, the Lipsky Amendment, which is the military retirement, that bill was sent back to committee. Not quite sure what's going on there, so I'm looking to the House Ways and Means Committee to keep us apprised of what's going on there, why that bill went back into committee. Let's see, Bill, do you know why? No. Okay.
No, I thought it was going to be 2 legislative days,
Yeah.
We got to recommittee.
Okay.
Madam
So-
Chair, I heard from our chair, Emily, that Bill was coming back to committee because there were a lot of other amendments that were being generated on the floor, mainly from workers, unions and so forth, because they all, if income tax was being forgiven for one segment of our workers, they wanted to be considered also.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm gonna stop. We have Representative Wood here, and is it an H91?
H91,
Okay.
yeah.
And I don't know, is the anybody in here?
Does now still work for you?
Yeah, you can do it right now. So H91 is not on the calendar, but will be tomorrow.
Yes, it's,
Notice.
you're going to be being voted out of appropriations.
No, it is,
today.
it is noticed, I thought.
So 218 is noticed.
218 is noticed.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to just,
Yeah, I don't know. It's a unusual place to, I'll just stand here, I guess. It's good enough, right?
Stand up on that table.
Yeah. Sure.
You take Casey's chair.
Thank you for giving me a few minutes here, and Representative Donahue is supposed to be here, but
let's see.
I know she is working on an amendment that she is going to be offering on in a bill tomorrow. So I just wanted a few minutes to review with you H91, which is officially titled, or will be if it passes, an act relating to Vermont homeless emergency assistance and responsive transition to housing program. It's VHARP, it's a new acronym. So this program is being set up to replace the hotel motel program, and to also replace something that people might know as the HOP program, Housing Opportunity Program. I know Representative McFawn knows all about these things because he probably originated some of them back in the day when you ran OEO. So these two programs working in concert will hopefully, what we intend to do is to get out in front of the homelessness issue, try to prevent as much homelessness as possible, but also try to address it as quickly as possible. One of the key things about this is that it is being transferred to the community instead of being run at the state level, but being run by community action agencies in the community in collaboration, of course, with other community partners like local shelters and the local housing coalitions. So what this does is really set up a process for that to happen by FY '27. So there would be a year of transition. FY '26 would be that 1 year of transition where we would pretty much continue the status quo as we know it today in what you'll see in the budget, which is language in the budget that has language for the general assistance. I always put program in quotes because it's not really a program. It's really money paid to hotels on behalf of individuals. So it sets out responsibilities for the community action agencies. It sets out responsibilities for the Department for Children and Families. Sets out an advisory, transition advisory committee. And that committee expires in 2029, so it's not an ongoing thing. It's just to aid with the transition. And we have received a ton of input and feedback. We've worked closely with the administration on this. And the only money that follows this in the bill is there's $10 million for the transition year to aid the community action agencies and the department. And I should say the Vermont Network Against Domestic Violence is also one of the community partners that it's called a statewide organization in here, but that's what it is because they have different federal rules that they need to comply with around domestic violence and the confidentiality that's required around that. So the money that goes to domestic violence shelters and for their use in sheltering people who are fleeing domestic violence would be separate from the community action agencies. That would be managed by the network for domestic violence. So happy to answer any questions that people might have.
So my understanding on this, just to be clear, is that this is a separate bill, so it's not included in the budget.
Correct.
And the 10 million though is parked in the budget, but not necessarily set aside for this program right now.
I believe that it is, but you'd have to ask your vice chair who's here someplace. Saw him somewhere over there.
Is it-
There's $10 million in here for it. And the 10 million is also here. So they may take that 10 million out of here, except for we identify how it should be distributed in this bill. So I'm going there in a few short minutes.
Okay. Okay.
The appropriation in the budget bill does not reference the 10 million, but 10 million in our spreadsheets for all other bills was kind of there.
Okay.
So that it wasn't spent.
Okay.
But the 10 million, I believe the chair is correct that it's in H91. And because we've already approved budget, 10 million is likely to, I think, stay in H91. It doesn't really matter. If you are going to spend the 10 million, it's got to be obviously appropriated somewhere.
Okay. Mike.
Yeah, so Teresa, for FY '26, then, if I heard you correctly, the program would stay status quo, funding would be the same as you see it today in the program, no change from 25 to 26 on the current dollars being spent.
So the governor's budget is actually a bit less than FY '25. However, the administration has indicated that they have sufficient carry forward in this line to be able to run it at FY '25 levels without increasing the governor's budget. And so that's what the plan is. You will see a technical amendment because the language that got put into the budget bill, it was supposed, what we said to Ledge Council was give us exactly what you had last year, and Ledge Council gave us exactly what we had last year. Unfortunately, last year was a transition period between July 1 and September 1 or 15, that the intent is that it would start on July 1. So the 1,100 room cap last year started, I can't remember if it's September 1st or 15th, but it would start on July 1 this year. So there'll be an amendment about that.
Thank you.
Brenda.
By taking out the 80-day cap, right now there's an 80-day cap. How long can the people stay in the motel without the 80-day cap?
For FY '26, there is still an 80-day cap for this
Right.
fiscal year. In the bill, you'll see in the implementation plan that we asked for the recommendations to come back from the department and from the members of the implementation committee about what caps that they would recommend.
So they could stay there. One person that came and talked in committee that's staying in another program, so she's been there 2 years. Could this happen with the hotel motel? And I thought it increased from 1,100 to 1,437 in annual appropriations.
That language is not in the appropriations bill.
So it's still 1,100.
It's 1,100.
And so recipients could stay past the 80 days if the intake person says you can stay.
If the passes the way it is right now, the answer is no. They can go in during winter weather, but not past the 80 days in the non-winter weather.
But that's 26, I meant after.
We will be getting recommendations back from the implementation committee that we have assigned those very specific tasks that are in the bill that we've reviewed. And they will give us their recommendations. And then as a body, we will have another bill next year that implements some or all of their recommendations.
Because my concern was Representative McGill made it very, very clear. She doesn't like people being stressed about the 80 days.
So to be clear, I believe the bill states that for FY '26, we remain the 80 days.
Yes.
Yeah, this bill also stands up a committee that's going to look at that 80 days and come back with a recommendation January or what?
February 1st.
February 1st of 2026.
Yes.
To deal with FY '27.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is, it really is about, there's a whole list of different things that that committee will be undertaking in terms of recommendations. And really, this is about getting out in front of and dealing with people. We have learned through testimony that there's too high of a percentage of people who move from homelessness into permanent housing and then back into homelessness again. And really, nobody is really looking at that right now. What are the reasons? Why is that happening? What is, how is this system failing, these folks, or what's the circumstances? Did you get into an apartment that was too expensive for you? Or we don't know the details about that, but part of the really desire to move this to the community level is those decisions and the flexibility and the quickness of action that can happen at the community level is just, frankly, better than we can do if we have all the decision-making at the state level.
Okay. Mary, did you have a question?
So, Chase, how did you come up with the $10 million appropriation figure?
We were trying to keep things I will be honest, the Community Action Agency said they needed more. It's split between the department, the community action agencies, Vermont Network Against Domestic Violence, and a portion of it is used to expand shelters, permanent shelters. What I've said from the outset is that we are not going to spend more in this program than we are spending in FY '25. In FY '25, we had $10 million in one-time dollars to go towards shelter development. So that $10 million in one time is divided between shelter development and then the transition support that those organizations will need.
Okay.
Well, my concern is that a lot of our agencies are already overmaxed. And so I'm hoping that the Oregon will give it back to you, but the $10 million figure just kind of out of the air is kind of a challenge.
I didn't hear the last part, Mary.
It's kind of a challenge just having a $10 million figure without having what we're really appropriating it to. What can we?
Well, you'll see in the bill, it is appropriated to the community, a portion to the community action agencies, a portion to the department. a portion to Vermont Network Against Domestic Violence, and a portion for use by the department in further shelter development. And the community action agencies are on board with this. They've worked really hard with community partners. And I know some of you may have gotten correspondence from shelter providers along the way. The shelter providers, I think, now see themselves more clearly in the bill about working with community partners. We continue to need shelters, so, they're not at risk of not being funded.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
And,
Appreciate it, Teresa.
just as I mentioned, the vote committee was 8-1, and Representative McGuire had to leave for a medical appointment, but he called me and wanted to make sure that he told me that he was 100% behind this, so it would have been 9-1 or 9-0.
Okay, great.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
You should know what I mean until 2.
Till 2. Okay. Thank
So
you.
know.
All right. Awesome.
Okay. So that bill should come on notice tomorrow. As far as what's noticed today for tomorrow, most of these bills, as I look through, have come through committee 8-0, 11-0. Most of them are unanimous right along. The only one that I see that came out 8-1, and I don't know who the two are, is the OPR bill, Professional Occupations Regulated by Office of Professional Regulation. I'm looking to Tango. Came out 8-1.
That was a long. Ways and means.
Believe I was
Long time.
I did.
You and I, Lisa, were the,
I was.
No, it's Val.
oh, no,
It was BLU.
Neil and I were?
No, I voted against OPR. So it was me and somebody. You about BL. That BL was up. I
Do
don't
you remember
have my-
why?
I don't have my notebook.
Okay.
Yeah, because there are some new fees in it. And there are, there's maybe 1 or 2 new positions. I can't remember what. And they were within the division of OPR for 1 new position for someone to coordinate all of the regulation of mental health professionals, because next year they want to do a deep dive into mental health and examine all of the practitioners in mental health. So there are people who call themselves counselors and behavioral folks. They have all different titles, and they don't have a good handle on it, and they want to understand who's qualified to do what and how to, if they need to regulate them or license them or whatever. So they feel they needed an additional position to do that. The new fees, a couple of them, honestly, a couple of fees are only raised $5 or $10 for someone applying for a license, for instance. A couple of them were left off their fee schedule, even though they were in statute. So a couple of professions weren't being charged when they should have been, so they put it back to make sure it was in statute. And then there was a really big fee, and this was probably the reason I voted against it. It is quote unquote an optional fee that, for instance, a large hospital will run a list every morning of every employee who is working in that hospital on that day. And currently, OPR will run that list for them and match it up to current licensure. So if somebody is practicing with their license expired for some reason, that will get caught. Because like a hospital like UVM, for instance, has hundreds of employees that might be working on any given day. Currently, OPR is doing that for free, but they would love to charge for that service. So we asked how much. At first, they had $1,500 in the bill, then they had $2,500, then they took out a dollar amount, and they said it's really going to be proportional because some businesses are so big that we run this report for many, many employees, and others are very small. It's called a data feed subscription fee, if I've got the terminology correctly. And I objected to it because
They're already doing it for instance, UDMMC. And I didn't want some of our smaller hospitals to be penalized by now suddenly being charged a fee that they're not accustomed to being charged. So that was my big objection to that. Plus, there are a couple of new fees. For instance, if you hold a license in a particular profession, to get a specialty endorsement on that license. Like for instance, and I'm pulling this out of my hat, if you're a civil engineer and you have a license, but you want to be also licensed to be a structural engineer, which is an endorsement on top of your civil engineering license, you have to pay an extra fee. So it essentially is a new fee, and there were a couple of odd circumstances like that.
Okay. John,
I was gonna mention, hospitals already have like internal controls for the license. Already, so we do that internally here, no one can be practicing without a license.
They told us that UVM relies on that to do it, so that's the testimony we received. But regardless, it's an extra fee that they probably don't need to pay.
Lisa, I think that was 821, wasn't that a day I was out, now that I think about
I
it?
wouldn't, but
I believe it was, you
Yeah,
got
so
an
I-
appointment, yes.
That said, it would have been 8-3, because I would have been a
That's
no.
correct, because you texted me that.
So it was 821, it would have, had I was out that day, I was the one, it would have been 8-3.
okay.
It was just a really long time ago, I can't see the needs of others have had it for a long time.
Okay. John,
Just an FYI, the position for mental health is in the budget. And it's general fund money. Normally, those would be paid for out of OPR funds. The OPR fund, what we were told, has got a pretty significant deficit. In part because of all of the compacts that we've been passing. So in the past, like if you were a nurse, but you lived in New Hampshire, but you practiced in Vermont, you had to get licensed in Vermont. And now, if they're a compact state, you don't, wherever your home state is. So we don't get that license. So that's caused strain on the OPR fund, and which is why we funded the mental health person out of general fund for this year. But the plan is for in the future to be charged back to OPR, which is funded by the license fees. So I'm sure that's where OPR is coming from. I'm not saying I agree with it, but that's where they're coming from.
And that is exactly what they.
is Matt Walker in here? No. Okay, so just, the T-bill is up tomorrow as well. It passed out of committee 11-0. Pretty much, the governors recommend right down the line. So I don't know, Chris, do you have anything to add to that? Yeah, so. Okay, I know we're between here and lunch, so if anybody has any other questions on any of the bills that are up for action tomorrow, having in mind they pretty much all came through unanimous through the committee, you can certainly reach out to me or a member of the committee.